the Nexus Social Hub podcast. Welcome to the Nexus Social Hub podcast.
So imagine walking into a university library, right? And you find this 52-week curriculum, but it's dedicated entirely to a religion that was essentially, invented last Tuesday.
Right, yeah, out of thin air.
Exactly. A belief system that actively teaches its followers that human beings are, well, an absolute mistake, that the universe is fundamentally hostile to us and our physical reality is, get this, nothing more than a biological hallucination.
Just a giant lie to hide a horrifying cosmic nightmare.
Yeah, precisely. And today, we are opening that exact textbook. Welcome to our deep dive into this, honestly, mind-bending topic.
It is the absolute definition of an epistemic labyrinth.
An epistemic labyrinth.
Yeah, a maze of knowledge, basically, where every single time you think you found the center, the walls shift, and you realize the floor you're standing on isn't even, real.
Okay, hold on. Meaning, a maze where the traps aren't physical, but they actually mess with your very concept of what is true and what is false.
Precisely. Because usually when we study historical artifacts or ancient religions, there's a comforting linearity to it all.
Right, like a clear timeline.
Exactly. We dig into the earth, we find a bronze coin in the bronze layer, and the historian categorizes it. Past, present, future. It's safe.
It makes sense.
But when you step into the world of modern myth-making and esoteric philosophy, specifically the project we're examining today, that chronological timeline is just deliberately shattered.
Shattered into a million pieces. So we are asking you, the listener, to put on the hat of a historian, an archaeologist, and I guess a religion scientist all at once today.
You're going to need all three hats, honestly.
Yeah, definitely. Because our mission on this deep dive is to unravel a really bizarre, multi-layered mythopoetic text from August 2025. And it's credited to someone named Sindre Sistrud.
Yes, and alongside it, we have an incredibly detailed 2026 university curriculum. It was designed from the ground up to study this exact text.
And all the wildly complex ideas surrounding it, too. I mean, the stack of sources we were working through today is just immensely dense.
It really is. At the center of it all is a cryptic, bilingual text titled Deepest Og's Journey, which translates from Norwegian to The Deep Dive in the Stars.
The Deep Dive in the Stars. I love that title, actually.
It's evocative, right? And surrounding that primary artifact, we have a series of theoretical essays outlining a framework called the Neo-Platonic Illusion Theory.
Which we will definitely get into.
Oh, we have to. And finally, we have this massive syllabus that analyzes the entire phenomenon through the lenses of existential philosophy, cognitive neuroscience, and cosmic terror.
Right, cosmic terror. So I want you to picture unearthing a piece of modern scripture that legitimately tries to answer the ultimate human question, How do you find meaning in an infinitely large, terrifyingly indifferent universe?
And instead of just writing a dry philosophical essay about it, the author has constructed a complete artificial religion.
Right. It is world building used as a form of philosophical inquiry. Okay, let's unpack this. We need a clear roadmap if we're going to survive this labyrinth.
We do. So we'll begin by examining the physical artifact of the text itself.
Right, what it actually looks like.
Exactly. Then we'll dissect its constructed, genuinely unearthly language. From there, we must peel back the philosophy of reality it proposes.
The Matrix stuff.
Yeah, the Matrix stuff. Then we'll analyze the specific mechanics of its cosmic horror, and finally, we'll arrive at its deeply surprising path to enlightenment.
Okay, so before we can understand how this cosmic philosophy operates, we really have to start with the artifact itself.
We have to look at the physical document, yeah.
So what exactly are we holding in our hands when we look at a copy of Deep Og's Journey?
Well, viewing this through an archaeological lens reveals a brilliant piece of visual manipulation. The primary document is formatted as a single-page, two-column layout.
Okay, so very traditional looking.
Very. On the left side, you have a text titled Bereshitnath Uzvaris. And this is written in a constructed, highly Latinized pseudo-language.
Sounds like something from a fantasy novel.
It does. And then directly across from it, in the right column, is the Norwegian translation, Ibeginnelsen var Deeped Ogstjerne.
So it looks exactly like what you would see if you opened up a scholarly dual language translation of the Dead Sea Scrolls. or, the Epic of Gilgamesh.
Exactly. You have the ancient, untouchable original text on one side and the helpful modern translation on the other.
The layout is essentially functioning as a modern critical edition.
It is. By placing a fabricated, completely alien sacred language right next to a readable modern translation, the author is artificially manufacturing historical and religious authority.
It demands to be read as an ancient, authoritative document.
Right. It forces the reader into a posture of reverence, even though the date stamp plainly tells us, hey, it was written in 2025.
It is giving itself instant gravitas without having to, earn it through centuries of tradition.
Which is a brilliant shortcut.
It really is. And
Yeah.
when you actually start reading the structure of the text, it mimics the hexameron.
Right. The biblical seven-day creation story from the book of Genesis.
Right. You have the repetition of the days, the rhythm of a deity speaking things into existence, the structural cadence of scripture.
But the content itself is completely warped.
Completely upside down.
The university curriculum categorizes this as an anti-Genesis.
Huh?
Let's contrast them a bit. In the biblical Genesis, God creates light, separates the waters, creates life, and repeatedly pauses to declare that what he has made is good.
Right. It is an architecture of order and benevolence.
Exactly. But in this text, the creators are ancient, monstrous gods entities like Cthulhu, Yog-Sothoth, and Nyarlathotep.
The Lovecraft Squad.
The Lovecraft Squad, yeah. They do not create light and life. They create suffering in the deep, the dark eternity in the cosmos, and an unquenchable cosmic thirst in the stars.
It is like finding a Bible written in the upside down from that show Stranger Things. It possesses the exact rhythm of a holy text, but everything it creates is fundamentally hostile to human existence.
All just deeply wrong.
Yeah. Day 1, day 2, day 3. It is entirely about the construction of a nightmare.
And the divergence becomes absolute on the seventh day.
Right, because in Genesis, the seventh day is the Sabbath.
Yeah.
God rests, and the human-centric world is perfectly complete.
Humanity is the crown jewel of the creation. But here, there is no rest. And more importantly, there is no humanity at all.
Wait, none?
None. The non-human elements simply take over. The text states that the scriptures spoke under the tree in the deep. The current sang Cthulhu's eternity, and the stars whispered Yog-Sothoth's light.
So the environment itself is doing the worshiping.
Exactly. It establishes what the sources call a pansemiotic universe.
Pansemiotic. Let's unpack that term for a second.
Sure. So pansemiotic suggests that everything in the universe, every current, every star, every shadow, is essentially communicating. Everything is a sign or a symbol.
So the universe has its own dark liturgy, its own worship service.
Yes, exactly.
But mankind isn't invited to the service. We aren't even a footnote in the creation story, which, pushes me to a very practical question. If the universe is entirely empty of humans in this text, who on earth is supposedly reading this? I mean, who is this scripture for if we don't exist in its worldview?
Well, this raises an important question, and it brings us to a fascinating pedagogical tool used in the university curriculum. They address this paradox head-on through a hypothetical origin story.
Oh, so they have lore for the book itself.
They do. When students study this text, they're instructed to read it simultaneously on two different tracks, externally and internally.
Okay, how does that work?
Externally, we are fully aware it's a piece of fiction written in 2025 by Sindri Susward.
Right, that's the real-world track.
But internally, within the lore of the fiction itself, we have to ask who penned these words. We have to treat the lore as if it were real history for a moment.
So the hypothetical reconstruction suggests this document was unearthed and translated by a secretive, highly syncretic brotherhood.
Yes. The lore implies they found a fragment of a non-human language, a cosmic cult dialect left behind by something older than the Earth. And they translated it into this ritualistic format. So the human readers are positioned as cultists.
They are initiates who are slowly learning the terrifying truth that their species means absolutely nothing in the grand scheme of the cosmos.
Right. They are hiding a cosmic nightmare inside the Trojan horse of a Genesis format.
That's insidious. The initiates think they are reading a standard creation myth, but they are actually reading the blueprints of their own insignificance.
It is a brilliant subversive tactic, but the layout and the seven-day structure only give it the feeling of scripture. The actual mechanics of the horror are hidden in the words themselves.
In that strange language on the left side of the page.
Yes. The language in that left-hand column is a violent collision of three entirely different worlds. To truly understand the psychology of this hypothetical cult, We really have to decode their bizarre language.
Yeah, because if this text is fundamentally hostile to humanity, how is it even communicating to us? What are these actual symbols on the page?
The curriculum refers to this as the philological dig.
The philological dig. So, digging into the words. Let's do that.
When we analyze the constructed language, which the author sometimes refers to as Arliha-Sanskata and other times as a pseudo-Semitic ritual idiolect, we find it is a linguistic chimera.
A monster made of stitched-together parts.
Precisely. It's built on 3 deeply incompatible substrata: Biblical Hebrew, Lovecraftian cosmic deities, and Buddhist or Sanskrit terminology.
Let's take these layers apart, because looking at the actual vocabulary, it is incredibly jarring. The Hebrew layer seems to be acting as the skeleton of the text, right?
It does. The text utilizes foundational Hebrew words that carry immense theological weight. For instance, it uses bereshit, which is Hebrew for "in the beginning."
And that's the exact opening word of the Torah.
Exactly. It implies a divine plan, a singular starting point for history. It also uses teham, referring to the deep or the primordial abyss from Genesis. It even uses the Hebrew plural noun for God, Elohim.
But it doesn't just leave those words alone, does it?
No, it pairs them directly with monsters. The text literally says Elohim Cthulhu.
That is such an aggressive combination. You are taking the sacred name of the monotheistic creator and attaching it to a fictional, tentacled cosmic horror.
And the subversion goes deeper than that. The sources point out that the text even recasts the archetypal story of Cain and Abel.
Wait, it does?
It turns them into Quainnath and Havelglar.
Let's stop and unpack that for a second, because Cain and Abel are the ultimate story of human failing, right? Jealousy, murder, the first violence between brothers. How do you have Cain and Abel in a universe that doesn't have humans?
By stripping them of their humanity entirely. In this language, Quainnath is translated as the son of darkness or suffering.
Okay.
And Havelglar is the son of light or awakening. The author has taken the oldest human archetypes of conflict and abstracted them into impersonal cosmic forces.
So they're no longer men making choices. They are fundamental physics of the universe clashing against each other.
Exactly. Which leads right into the second layer, the Lovecraftian element.
Right. We briefly touched on Cthulhu, but the creator god of the Bible is entirely replaced by a pantheon of cosmic horrors created by the early 20th century weird fiction writer H.P. Lovecraft.
You have Cthulhu, who creates the suffering in the deep. You have Yog-Sothoth, which is a variation of Lovecraft's Yog-Sothoth, who creates the empty eternity of the cosmos.
And you have Nyarlathotep, who creates the thirst of darkness.
So you have ancient Middle Eastern theology violently fused with 1920s pulp horror. But the third layer introduces an element that seems completely contradictory.
The Buddhist layer.
Yes, the Buddhist layer. The author pulls deeply from Sanskrit and Pali terminology.
Right, like the word sunyata.
That's the most prominent example. In traditional Buddhism, shunyata refers to emptiness. It's the realization that all things lack independent, inherent existence. Everything is interdependent.
A very peaceful concept, usually.
Very. But here, the author twists the word into sunyakatya.
They redefine it as a dark, physical, cosmic emptiness. The text also mentions the Eightfold Path, right?
Right.
But it twists the Sanskrit into avarhus.
Imagine tossing a Torah, a Buddhist sutra, and a sci-fi horror paperback into a blender. That's what this is.
And it isn't just the concepts they're mixing, it's the physical sounds of the words, too.
Oh, the morphology is highly deliberate. The author employs a dense array of apostrophes, guttural consonant clusters like the ki, sith, and ki.
And so harsh.
It's meant to be. They use these repetitive, almost droning suffixes like sa and use
It looks completely unpronounceable on the page. Why construct it this way?
to create a ritual idiolect. The phonetic design is meant to simulate an ancient, alien morphology. The harsh, guttural sounds evoke something pre-human, something that requires a different kind of vocal cord to pronounce properly.
Like you need tentacles to speak it.
Exactly. Meanwhile, the visual inclusion of diacritical marks, the little dots and lines under the letters in the printed text, mimics the extreme precision of modern academic philology.
So it looks and sounds like a language that demands to be chanted in a dark, subterranean room. I am struggling to understand the logic behind the recipe, though. Why blend these specific traditions? Isn't mixing a religion focused on total peace, compassion, mentally contradictory?
Well, what's fascinating here is that the contradiction is the engine of the entire project.
Oh, so.
In traditional Buddhism, the concept of emptiness, The realization that the self isn't real in a permanent, isolated way is profoundly liberating. It frees you from the cycle of suffering.
Right.
But in this text, that exact same concept of emptiness is weaponized. It represents a terrifying, nihilistic cosmic void. The author is taking the intricate mechanics of spiritual enlightenment and running them through the dark filter of cosmic horror.
They are saying that enlightenment isn't finding peace. Enlightenment is realizing you are trapped in a meaningless void.
Yes. The language proves this isn't just a spooky campfire story. It is a deliberate attempt to describe the fundamental nature of reality itself.
They are building a linguistic bridge between the ancient human search for meaning and the cold, mechanical reality of a modern universe.
Which forces us to ask, what is the actual theory of reality that this text is built upon? Because we know this mythos is part of a larger project by Sindra Susrud.
Right. The curriculum expands way beyond just the text.
It does. To understand the world of the text, we have to look at the scientific and philosophical blueprint he lays out in his theoretical essays.
So if the language is the bridge, where does the bridge lead? Enter the Neo-Platonic Illusion Theory, or NPI.
Yes. The central claim of NPI is that human existence, as we experience it day to day, is a multi-layered illusion.
So we're in the Matrix.
Basically.
Yeah.
It posits that reality is essentially a simulated environment, a matrix where human consciousness functions as both the receiver of the broadcast and the architect to the illusion itself.
I want to break down that name first, though. Neo-Platonic. We are talking about Plato here, right?
Yes. Specifically, Plato's allegory of the cave, where humans are chained in a cave watching shadows on a wall, completely convinced that the shadows are the true reality because they've never seen the light outside.
Classic Philosophy 101.
Right. But NPI leans even more heavily on Plotinus, a philosopher from late antiquity who developed the theory of emanation.
Can you explain emanation for me? I always get lost in the ancient metaphysics.
It's actually a great visual. Think of emanation like a light bulb in the center of a massive, foggy room. At the very center is the one, the absolute blinding truth of reality.
I am picturing it.
As the light travels outward into the fog, it gets weaker, dimmer, and more distorted. By the time the light reaches the walls of the room, it's just a faint, degraded glow.
So the light is losing information the further it goes.
Exactly. Plotinus argued that our physical world is that faint glow on the wall. It's a weak, distant echo of true reality.
So NPI uses this ancient mystical framework. But the sources show he doesn't stop there. He grounds this heavily in modern real-world cognitive science.
Extremely heavily. The essays cite leading cognitive scientists like Daniel Dennett, who proposed the idea of human consciousness as a user illusion.
A user illusion?
Yes. And Anil Seth, who famously describes human perception as a controlled hallucination.
A controlled hallucination, meaning my brain is just guessing what is out there.
Exactly. The brain is locked in a dark, silent vault.
Yeah.
It has no direct access to the outside world. It only receives electrical impulses from your sensory organs.
Right. It's just sitting in the dark getting zapped.
Predictive processing models suggest that your brain constantly hallucinates a version of the world, and it only uses those electrical impulses from your eyes and ears to correct its errors.
To make sure the hallucination lines up with the physical objects.
Right. If the hallucination keeps you from walking off a cliff, the brain considers it a success.
It doesn't care about truth. It just cares about survival.
Which brings in Donald Hoffman's interface theory of perception.
I love this part.
It's mind-blowing. Hoffman argues that evolution specifically tuned the human brain to hide the objective truth of reality from us, because perceiving the raw data of the universe would be too overwhelming and would get us killed.
I am still trying to wrap my head around this. Are you saying I'm essentially navigating a desktop interface and my physical body, the chair I am sitting in, all of it, there are just app icons?
That is the exact analogy Hoffman uses, in which the NPI theory adopts wholesale. Imagine you're writing an email on your computer, you want to attach a file. You look at your desktop and you see a small blue rectangular icon shaped like a folder.
Right.
Now, is that file actually a blue rectangle located 2 inches from the edge of your screen?
Of course not. The file is a massively complex array of voltages, microscopic transistors, and magnetic fields inside a silicon chip.
Right. But if your computer forced you to perceive the raw physics of those logic gates and toggle millions of microscopic switches just to attach a PDF, you'd never get anything done.
I just smashed the computer.
Exactly. You would fail to function. So your operating system gives you a simplified, colorful, user-friendly interface. NPI argues that the physical world three-dimensional space, the linear flow of time, the solidity of objects, is not the true reality of the universe.
It is just the biological operating system your brain evolved to help you interact with a universe that is far too complex to comprehend.
The synthesis is incredible. He is taking Plotinus's ancient mystical fog and replacing it with neurobiology.
But here is my major pushback on all of this. How do you prove that reality is an illusion using science? If the science itself is part of the illusion, aren't you just trapped in a paradox?
That is the genius of Saussures' NPI theory. He actually attempts to make this philosophical framework scientifically falsifiable.
Wait, really? How?
It turns to developmental psychology, specifically with the work of Jean Piaget and modern fMRI scans.
How does child psychology prove the matrix? That sounds like a stretch.
Well, the hypothesis works like this. If reality is a learned cognitive interface designed for evolutionary efficiency, then newborn children haven't fully installed the software yet.
Oh, that makes sense.
Their brains are still learning how to construct the hallucination. Therefore, as children grow up and their predictive brain scheme is mature, as they learn the rules of the interface, they should actually become more susceptible to certain cognitive and optical illusions.
Because their brains learn to take shortcuts to save processing power.
Precisely. The sources mention the Ebbinghaus illusion to prove this.
Let's visualize the Ebbinghaus illusion for the listener. Imagine two identical orange circles, right? Around the first orange circle, you draw a ring of massive blue circles. Around the second orange circle, you draw a ring of tiny blue circles.
And to an adult, the orange circle surrounded by the tiny blue dots looks huge, and the one surrounded by the massive blue dots looks incredibly small, even though they're exactly the same size.
Your adult brain falls for the illusion instantly. Why?
Because your brain has learned that context matters. It uses the surrounding environment to rapidly calculate size and distance to save time.
But a very young child whose interface isn't fully formed and who hasn't learned to rely heavily on context.
They will often look at the image and see the two orange circles as exactly the same size. They see the raw data more accurately than the adult.
The child hasn't downloaded the shortcut yet.
Exactly. The NPI theory uses this as empirical evidence that as we grow and adapt to our environment, we are actually retreating further into the constructed hallucination. Our brains get better at lying to us efficiently.
That is a staggering way to view childhood development, but it leads to a terrifying question. If everything I see, touch, and feel is an illusion designed by evolution to keep me alive, what exactly am I being protected from? What is the reality outside the interface? Because if my brain is expending this much biological energy to hide the truth from me, the truth must be absolutely horrific.
You have just hit the philosophical bedrock of the entire university curriculum: nihilism.
The void.
Outside the interface, there is only the void. The curriculum dedicates a massive amount of time to examining the human existential crisis of meaning.
Right, the curriculum doesn't just stick to the science, it brings in philosophy.
To build a foundation, they bring in the German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche and his famous, often misquoted declaration of the death of God.
And the curriculum makes a very strong point about this. When Nietzsche says God is dead, it is almost universally misunderstood today as a triumphant atheist slogan, like, "Hooray, science won, we beat religion, let's go celebrate."
Right, but it was the exact opposite of a celebration. For Nietzsche, it was a profound cultural catastrophe.
Why?
He was acting as a diagnostician of a terminal sickness in Europe's value system. For centuries, Western values, morality, and purpose were anchored in a transcendent divine realm. There was a true world outside of this physical one that gave everything down here meaning.
The anchor was God.
Yes. But when the belief in that divine guarantor began to collapse in the 19th century due to the rise of science, secularism, and the Enlightenment, the cultural values didn't immediately disappear.
People still believed in human rights, objective morality, and progress.
But Nietzsche realized the foundation had vanished. They were standing on thin air. He warned that when society finally realizes the anchor is gone, we will face a crisis of passive nihilism.
Passive nihilism being a state of exhaustion.
A state of exhaustion, withdrawal, and the creeping, paralyzing feeling that if there's no ultimate authority, then absolutely nothing matters.
The sources also bring in the Danish philosopher Søren Kierkegaard to look at the psychological, deeply personal side of this crisis.
Right, Kierkegaard talks extensively about despair.
But he defines despair not just as feeling sad because you had a bad day. He defines it as a sickness of the self. It is an inability or a stubborn refusal to truly become yourself in relation to the infinite.
And Kierkegaard introduces this amazing concept of the dizziness of freedom. Imagine standing on the edge of a massive cliff. Okay.
The fear you feel isn't just the fear of falling. It is the terrifying realization that you have the power to throw yourself off.
Wow. Because when all the old rules and divine commandments vanish, you are suddenly entirely responsible for choosing your own existence. There is no script anymore.
And that total freedom produces profound existential anxiety.
If I apply this to real life, it's the panic of waking up at 3 a.m. and realizing you can quit your job, leave your city, change your name, and nothing in the universe will physically stop you. The freedom is suffocating.
So stack these layers together. We have Nietzsche diagnosing the cultural collapse of objective meaning. We have Kierkegaard diagnosing the psychological terror of absolute, unanchored freedom.
And we have the NPI cognitive science suggesting that our very perception of a solid, manageable world is a biological lie designed to keep us functioning.
Yes.
If the NPI theory is the protective desktop interface, and Nietzsche's nihilism is the realization that the interface is fake, what happens when we bypass the firewall? What happens when we force ourselves to look at the raw, unfiltered code of the universe? That is where we move out of philosophy and into the Lovecraftian engine. This is where the cosmic terror enters the curriculum.
The void staring back.
The curriculum utilizes H.P. Lovecraft's specific literary philosophy, known as cosmicism or cosmic indifferentism, to represent that raw, unfiltered reality.
Cosmicism, what does that mean practically?
Cosmicism is the horrific realization that the universe is vast, entirely mechanical, and fundamentally not organized around human meaning, human morals, or human survival.
It is the ultimate demotion of our species. For thousands of years, we placed ourselves at the center of God's creation. The sun revolved around us. The gods listened to our prayers.
Cosmicism says we are a microscopic temporary accident on a rock floating in a void that doesn't care if we live, die, or scream.
And Lovecraft used the genre of literature to make that abstract philosophical concept visceral. The curriculum breaks down his specific theory of weird fiction, which is really interesting.
In Lovecraft's view, true horror is not just a physical monster. A vampire that wants to drink your blood or a werewolf that wants to tear your throat out. Those are terrifying, yes, but they operate within the known laws of nature.
You can fight a wolf. You can stab a vampire with a stake. The rules make sense. The curriculum actually splits horror into 3 distinct levels, which I found to be a brilliant framework for understanding this text.
Let's walk through those 3 tiers. First, you have bodily horror. This is the fear that your physical form can be harmed, invaded, or destroyed. The slasher film, the zombie.
The fear of being eaten or stabbed.
Exactly. The second tier is ontological horror.
Yeah.
This is the fear that the categories of what you thought was real or possible are completely shattered.
Like what?
It is the realization that the world does not operate the way science or sanity dictates. Ghosts, demons, the supernatural. Things that shouldn't exist but do.
And then there is the highest tier, which Lovecraft pioneered.
Cosmic horror. This goes beyond the destruction of the body or the bending of physics. Cosmic horror is epistemic collapse.
There's that phrase again. Epistemic collapse.
It is the realization that humanity has permanently lost its centrality in the universe. Our history, our science, our great religions are exposed as pathetic, provincial misinterpretations of a terrifyingly vast cosmos.
A cosmos inhabited by entities so ancient and powerful that just looking at them shatters the human mind.
But the curriculum asks a really important methodological question here. How does a literary mythos from pulp magazines in the 1920s become a quasi-religion in 2025?
How does an author like Cinder Sisrud take these fictional monsters with unpronounceable names and turn them into the Dipet Og Sodina scripture?
The answer lies in a literary technology called pseudo-bibliography.
The fake book, like the Necronomicon.
Exactly. Lovecraft realized early on that you can only make a monster so scary. To truly terrify a reader, you have to convince them that the monster has a historical footprint.
He didn't just write scary stories. He wrote stories about academic researchers finding forbidden ancient texts. He invented a grimoire called the Necronomicon.
But he didn't just mention it in passing.
No, he gave it a whole history.
He gave it a fake author, the mad Arab Abdul al-Hazred. He gave it a fake translation history through Greek and Latin. He listed the real-world libraries, like the British Museum and the Widener Library at Harvard, that supposedly held the few surviving rare copies.
That's dedication to the bit. And crucially, he encouraged his other writer friends to reference the Necronomicon in their own independent stories.
It was the original shared universe. It was an open-source, collective world-building exercise. By constantly cross-referencing this fake book with real history and having multiple authors treat it as real, it gains a bizarre kind of authority. It feels archival.
And the theology that emerges from this pseudo-bibliography features a concept the curriculum identifies as anti-millennialism.
Let's contrast that with traditional religions. Most major faiths feature millennialism or an eschatology, a belief that history is moving toward an ultimate endpoint.
An upcoming cosmic shift, a second coming, or an apocalypse that will bring salvation, purification, and a new golden age for the chosen believers.
Even secular ideologies have this. The utopian belief that through science or revolution, we will eventually build a perfect society. It is the arc of the moral universe bending toward justice.
But this cult scripture flips that entirely, doesn't it?
It flips it completely. Lovecraft's cults also await a grand cosmic shift, a time when the stars are right. But they do not expect salvation.
What do they expect?
They wait a shift that will bring about human dissolution, global madness, or our total subordination to alien gods. It is an eschatology of pure destruction. The initiates of the cult are not preparing to be saved. They are preparing to be erased.
Wow, okay, I have to pause here because we need to address something that the university syllabus is very strict about handling properly. The source materials explicitly mandate that any academic study of this mythos must impartially address the real-world context of Lovecraft the human being.
It is essential historical context. H.P. Lovecraft's personal letters and beliefs included heavily documented racism, anti-Semitism, and extreme xenophobia.
And the curriculum makes it very clear that a serious academic study cannot ignore this reality. Nor should it simplistically reduce all of his cosmic horror only to his biography.
The goal of the curriculum isn't to cancel the text, nor is it to endorse the ideology. The goal is to study how tremendous aesthetic power and profoundly harmful ideology can coexist in the exact same literary architecture.
So, how does the syllabus teach students to handle this contradiction objectively?
The pedagogical approach trains students to historicize and counter-read the texts.
Counter-read.
Yes. For example, they analyze how Lovecraft frequently coded hybrid bodies, waves of immigration, and unknown foreign languages as literal threats to biological and cultural order in his stories.
The alien invasion was often a thin metaphor for demographic change. He weaponized his own prejudices into horror.
Precisely. The curriculum asks students to formalize this process, to clinically examine how the mechanics of his horror were built upon a foundation of fearing the other.
And once the students understand that mechanism, what then?
They study how modern authors, like Sindre Susrud or others in the weird fiction movement, actively re-script and overwrite that mythology.
So they take the tools without the prejudice.
Exactly. They take the powerful framework of cosmic horror, the insignificance of humanity, the vastness of the cosmos, but they can completely decenter and discard Lovecraft's prejudices. They build a new philosophy on the ruins of the old one.
Which brings me to the biggest question I have had since we started this deep dive. Here's where it gets really interesting. If we accept the premise of this modern mythos, that the cosmos is brutally indifferent, that human meaning is just a biological hallucination designed to keep us working, and that the ultimate truth of the universe is a terrifying void.
Yeah.
This sounds overwhelmingly depressing. If the universe is a cold, uncaring machine and our perception of it is just a biological hallucination, why not just give up? Does this text just leave its hypothetical initiates trapped in that passive nihilism Nietzsche warned us about?
That is the logical assumption you would make if you stopped reading at the cosmic horror phase. But actually,
No.
And this is the most surprising, conceptually brilliant twist in the entire university curriculum and in Susrud's project. The text does not end in despair. It ends with a radical, almost paradoxical call to action.
So there is actually a cure to the cosmic horror.
Yes, there is. The final piece of the puzzle is found in the third essay provided in our source stack, titled The Path of Desire, or Desiret's Ethic. This essay offers the philosophical cure to the paralyzing nihilism and the suffocating matrix of illusions we have been discussing.
And it does this by completely flipping traditional Buddhism on its head, doesn't it? Because normally in Buddhism, you have the concept of tanha, which translates to thirst, craving, or desire.
Right.
And traditional doctrine states that this desire is the root of all human suffering. If you want to escape the painful cycle of existence, you have to extinguish your desire. You have to let go.
But Susrud's framework does not extinguish desire. It ignites it.
Oh, wow.
The author brings in heavily influential 20th century French philosophers, specifically Gilles Deleuze and Félix Guattari, alongside the phenomenologist Maurice Merleau-Ponty. These thinkers fundamentally redefined what desire actually is.
How do they redefine it?
They argue against the traditional psychoanalytic view that desire is a lack.
Wait, explain desire as a lack first, so we have a baseline.
In the traditional view, you only desire what you do not have. You are hungry, so you desire food. You are lonely, so you desire love. Desire is a vacuum cleaner trying to suck in objects to fill an empty hole inside of you.
Okay, that makes sense. It's a deficit.
But Deleuze and Guattari argue that desire is not a lack. Instead, desire is a productive machine. It is a positive, affirming, creative life force that generates new realities, new connections, and new ways of living.
So instead of a vacuum cleaner trying to suck things in, desire is more like a 3D printer pushing new things out into the world.
That's a perfect analogy. And via Merleau-Ponty, this creative desire is anchored fundamentally in the physical, lived body. It is not an abstract spiritual concept. It is the blood in your veins and the breath in your lungs.
So if we apply this back to the illusion theory, instead of saying the physical world is an illusion, therefore I should detach from it completely and wait for death, this philosophy says the physical world is an illusion, therefore the old rules don't matter, and I am entirely free to engage with this world on my own terms, using my productive desire as a compass.
Exactly. You become an active architect of the illusion rather than passive victim of it.
That completely flips the despair into empowerment.
It does. And the visual anchor for this whole concept, the image that ties the mythology to the philosophy, is a striking piece of iconography included in the texts. It is an image of the fasting Buddha, or the ascetic Gautama, rendered in the classical Gandhara artistic style.
I really want listeners to picture this because it is not the plump, smiling content Buddha statue you see in a local restaurant. This is an emaciated, skeletal figure.
It is extremely visceral.
You can see every single rib protruding. His eyes are sunken deep into his skull. Veins are popping out of his arms. It is an intense, almost horrific depiction of a human body pushed to the absolute brink of starvation.
In traditional Buddhist history, this statue represents the extreme period of asceticism that Siddhartha Gautama practiced before he realized that starving himself was a dead end. He gave it up to find the middle way.
Right. But in Susrud's mythos, this specific emaciated figure is recontextualized. He is wrapped in a cosmic halo and profound starry darkness. He represents the ultimate dissolution of the flesh and the complete intentional breakdown of the biological user interface we talked about earlier.
He has literally starved the illusion out of his own brain. He has forced his body to look past the desktop icons.
He has bypassed the firewall.
Yes, yet the imagery suggests that through this dark, terrifying cosmic emptiness, through that weaponized Tuyatu, the true light of awakening finally shines.
Which leads to the ultimate goal of this entire mythos, Satori.
Satori is a Zen Buddhist term for sudden, comprehensive awakening. The text proposes that by facing the cosmic horror, by accepting without flinching that the universe is indifferent and that the self you value so much is just an evolutionary interface, the ego finally dissolves.
But again, my instinct is that losing your ego in an indifferent universe would lead to madness. How does it lead to freedom?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the curriculum outlines a very specific sequence of liberation. First, you face the cosmic horror. This is represented by Lovecraft, and what the French psychoanalyst Jacques Lacan calls the real, the traumatic, unnameable reality outside of human language.
That is the terrifying void, the moment the ego shatters.
Right. But once the ego is gone, once you have accepted your absolute insignificance, a second phase begins. You realize the universe isn't a prison designed to torture you. It is a playground.
A playground.
The curriculum maps this onto the Hindu concept of Leela, or divine play, championed by 20th century thinkers like Alan Watts.
Alan Watts talked about how the universe is basically playing hide and seek with itself.
Exactly. The cosmic horror transforms into the cosmic play. The indifferent machinery of the universe becomes a space for Deleuze's productive desire to build and create without the paralyzing fear of judgment.
And then?
Finally, this realization leads to absolute liberation, which the text maps onto the ancient philosopher Nagarjuna's concept of emptiness and Zen Satori.
Let me try to synthesize this into a real-world analogy. It is like realizing you are trapped inside a highly immersive, incredibly stressful video game.
Okay, I like where this is going.
At first, you are terrified because you realize nothing around you is real in the way you thought. Your house, your social status, your bank account, it is all just digital code designed to keep you playing.
The epistemic collapse.
Yes. But once you push through the fear and fully accept that it is just a game, the terror vanishes. The existential stakes are gone. If you lose all your points, it doesn't matter. Because the ego is dead, you can finally just play.
You can experiment.
You can build things just for the joy of building them. And most importantly, you can look around and empathetically help the other players who are still suffering, because they are still terrified, believing the game is real life.
That is phenomenal synthesis. Because your ego is dissolved, your actions can flow freely without the constant draining anxiety of self-preservation. You can act with genuine empathy and compassion, which in traditional Buddhism is known as karun.
So what does this actually look like for someone waking up on a Tuesday in 2026? Does this mean I still go to my 9-to-5 office job, but I just view it differently?
Yes. You still chop wood and carry water, as the Zen proverb goes.
Yeah.
You still go to the office, you still pay your rent, but you are no longer crushed by the ontological weight of it.
It's lighter.
Exactly. You recognize the office politics and the societal expectations as part of the interface, part of the illusion. You participate in the game with a sense of lightness, irony, and deep empathy for those who take the illusion too seriously.
This modern mythopoetic project, this fake scripture, these bizarre languages, and this heavy theoretical framework is essentially a highly complex, multidisciplinary answer to the modern existential crisis.
It is. It weaves together cutting-edge cognitive science, post-structuralist philosophy, and esoteric mythology to find a practical way to live joyfully in a mechanical, digital, and completely indifferent universe.
It is a remarkable testament to how the human mind operates, isn't it?
Truly. We are fundamentally meaning-making machines, and even when the machine explicitly tells us that the universe has no objective meaning, we will construct a towering, intricate mythology just to make sense of that emptiness.
I want to take a breath and recap the incredible intellectual journey we have been on today. We started by unearthing an invented, ancient-sounding artifact that looked like a newly discovered Dead Sea Scroll.
An artifact that demanded reverence.
Right. And we traced its twisted linguistic DNA, seeing how it violently blended the ancient reverence of Hebrew, the cosmic dread of Lovecraftian deities, and the spiritual void of Buddhism into a ritual language.
A chimera.
Then we dove deep down into the cognitive neuroscience of the Neo-Platonic Illusion Theory, realizing that our brains are essentially running a survival software program to hide the terrifying reality of the void from us.
We face the absolute nihilism of a cold universe.
And yet, out the other side of that darkness, we emerged into a philosophy of empathetic, joyful participation in the cosmic game.
The journey from cosmic terror to cosmic play.
I want to bring this entirely back to you listening to this right now. You might not be studying occult language from 2025, but you are constantly building your own reality interface every single day.
Every time you open your phone.
Exactly. You wake up and you take the absolute chaos of the world, the endless news feeds, the barrage of emails, the daily stress of your job, the sheer crushing volume of data in the modern age, and you construct a narrative.
You build a user illusion just to survive the day and get to tomorrow.
Sindra Susrud's Dipit Og Shernane is just a massive, complex, funhouse mirror. It is showing us how human beings have always done this. We take the terrifying, unnameable unknown of the cosmos, and we turn it into stories, gods, and systems that we can safely navigate.
We build the maze so we don't have to look at the void outside it.
Which leaves me with a final thought for you to ponder, building right off this concept of the illusion theory.
Both should be good.
If our biological brains evolved over millions of years to create a physical user illusion to protect us from the overwhelming raw data of the physical universe, are our digital algorithms and our hyper-curated social media feeds just the next evolutionary step of that process?
No.
Are we currently actively building a secondary Neo-Platonic illusion, an artificial digital matrix designed to protect ourselves from the terrifying, unpredictable reality of each other?
That is a profoundly vital question for the modern age.
And if we are, what exactly happens to us when that illusion breaks?
I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. As you go through your week, take a moment to look closely at the interface of your own reality today. See you next time.
The Nexus Social Hub.